Stoicism can help you stop worrying and cultivate inner peace. The question is, will you let it? At the heart of Stoic philosophy is a realization. Some things must be understood a certain way. To stop worrying and start living again is to understand the metaphysics of the self as understood by the ancient Stoics, and especially as emphasized by Marcus Aurelius in his Meditations. It is to understand that your story isn't the world's story, nor is it the universe's story. The universe doesn't turn for you, even if its turn does determine your turn. So, what is your story? Let's find out. If you appreciate what we're doing, do us a simple free favor by hitting the subscribe button and make sure you don't skip any part of the video to get the mindfulness needed to truly transcend worrying. Now, let's get started. Understand yourself. Your story is one of accumulation, of gathering, of collection, of experiences, of ideas, of memories. Over the years, everything you've gone through, good, bad, or indifferent, has piled up, creating the person you believe yourself to be. These events were often beyond your control, thrown at you by the world, by circumstances, by forces you couldn't always anticipate. Sometimes you had a say in how things went, but only sometimes. And as time passed, all these things began to shape you, mold you into the person you are today. Now they make you think of yourself as the sum total of these experiences, the thoughts and reactions you've had, the choices you've made, the memories that linger in the back of your mind. In your understanding then, that's all you are, a subjective creation, a person who has been molded by the life you've lived. But no, you're not just that. You're more than that. And that is what Stoicism has been telling you all along. Stoicism teaches us that there's more to us than this accumulation of lived experiences. At the heart of Stoic philosophy is the idea that we are not just the sum of our thoughts, reactions, and experiences. What if I told you that those thoughts, which feel so defining, are just a surface-level reflection of your survival instincts, mechanisms to protect your mind and body? And because of this, they're incredibly vulnerable. These thoughts are influenced by fear, desire, pain, pleasure, and everything else that drives the human machine. When you practice Stoicism, you're often focusing on this vulnerable self, the part of you that gets overwhelmed, that feels stressed, that struggles to control its impulses. You're trying to apply Stoic practices to this fragile identity, hoping that with enough willpower, you can bring it under control. But Stoicism isn't just about willpower, is it? It's about transcending that fragile self altogether. How often have you found yourself frustrated by your own persistence in repeating the same mistakes or failing to achieve the inner peace Stoic wisdom promises? It is true that this too is what being a human entails, but then again, you do want to get rid of these very human shortcomings, don't you? Besides, to be human is more than just giving in to desires and temptations, letting our passions rule us and our emotions dominate us. It is also to love and love back, to care for others as we care for ourselves, practice the Stoic virtues we know and love. The reason you're not making significant progress, why you can't stop worrying, is because you're trying to wrestle with a self that doesn't need to be wrestled with. Maybe, as the Stoics suggest, you need to step back and recognize that you are not these thoughts. You are something beyond them. Here's the common trap. Most people think that a Stoic mindset is about pushing through, gritting your teeth, and enduring life's challenges with a stiff upper lip. You practice it by managing your anger, resisting temptations, or keeping calm when work gets overwhelming. You suppose this is how the Stoics, be it Marcus Aurelius, Seneca, or Epictetus, were able to keep calm, think clearly, control their anger, let go of excess, and how you will do all those things too. You work on these things. Perhaps you've cut down on indulgent foods, curbed impulsive spending, or tried to remain more even-keeled in your relationships. These efforts are praiseworthy, no doubt, and they are often the first step toward mastering yourself. But is that really where the journey ends? Think about it. If the Stoic way is meant to equip us with the tools to face life's greatest challenges, to always be resilient in adversity, then why do we so often crumble in the face of something truly destabilizing? Why, when a tragedy shakes us to our core, does all of our Stoic training seem to evaporate in an instant? We manage to control our temper at work, but lose it completely when faced with loss, betrayal, or existential fear. The question begs itself: where do we go wrong? The problem is, most of us are still stuck in that vulnerable self. We're using Stoic practices like patches on a sinking ship, trying to plug the holes, trying to hold everything together, without realizing that the real goal is to transcend the ship altogether. We think that our minds are those vulnerable thoughts and feelings that react to outside events, so we exhaust ourselves trying to control them. We work hard to suppress natural impulses, anger, frustration, desire, when, in fact, with the mindfulness that Stoicism offers, we should already know that we don't need to suppress them. We need to see beyond them. The brave indifference that Stoicism advocates isn't about being unaffected by life. It's about realizing that your true self exists independent of these fleeting reactions. The self that Stoicism asks you to cultivate is the one that observes without attachment, the one that calmly watches thoughts rise and fall without clinging to them, without being defined by them. It's the self that exists in a realm beyond survival, beyond fear, beyond desire. It's the rational guiding principle within you that isn't swayed by life's ups and downs because it knows that those things are temporary. But most of us haven't tapped into this higher self, so we keep applying Stoicism to the wrong parts of ourselves. This is why, despite your efforts to practice Stoicism, you still feel unsettled in the face of life's big trials. This is why, instead of naturally driving your worries away, being willing to focus on what you can control, you sport that stiff upper lip and try to toughen up to them. You're scratching the surface of Stoicism, focusing on self-improvement in areas that, while important, are still dominated by your vulnerable, instinctual self. The real power of Stoicism comes when you transcend that part of yourself altogether. The more that you haven't yet discovered is this: you are not your experiences, you are not your reactions, you are not your anger, your fear, your frustrations. You are something far deeper, an enduring rational essence that can observe all of these things without being overwhelmed by them. Most people never get to this level of understanding. They stop at self-control, trying to tame the vulnerable self that is driven by destiny. They fail to see that self-control is only the beginning, and that the end is our true self, the self that already knows what it can and cannot control, because it sees everything as it is. The true goal of Stoicism is self-transcendence. It's seeing past the vulnerable self altogether and living from the part of you that is untouched by the chaos of the world. Master yourself. The true self is not defined by your past, your experiences, or your story. This true self exists beyond the ups and downs of life, detached from the constant noise of your emotions and reactions. It's the part of you that is unshaken by what happens in the outside world, and it can only be accessed through reason, the guiding principle that Stoicism champions. This detached self, when led by reason, is the only thing that can truly set you free from worry, stress, and the anxieties that come with living in a chaotic world. Think about how often your subjective self, the one deeply tied to your emotions, takes over when you're facing a challenge. Whether it's a stressful day at work, a difficult relationship, or even something as simple as a minor inconvenience, your mind instantly jumps to conclusions, ruminating over every possible outcome, fearing the worst. That's the subjective self in action. It clings to the past, interprets the present through a lens of personal bias, and projects fear and doubt onto the future. It's the part of you that suffers. But what if you stopped letting this self lead the way? What Stoicism teaches us is that you don't need to fight this battle with your subjective, suffering self at the helm. In fact, if you let that part of you take control, it will keep you trapped in a cycle of worry and frustration. It will tell you that every obstacle is a catastrophe, every setback is a failure, and every difficult moment is something to fear. But this is a distorted view, one colored by your emotions and insecurities. The Stoic teachings take on a completely different color when you separate your reasoning, or the guiding principle, from the thoughts that are the result of your experience. What you need to do is let your guiding principle, your rational mind, your true self, take the reins. The guiding principle can step back and see things clearly, to differentiate between what's real and what's just a product of your subjective self's distorted thinking. And when you allow this guiding principle to take charge, something remarkable happens. You start living again, as you were meant to. You start to see life for what it really is, free from the illusions of fear and worry. You begin to experience true peace of mind, not by suppressing your emotions, but by seeing them for what they are, fleeting, temporary responses that don't define you. For Stoicism to work its magic in your life, for its teachings to be truly transformative, you must learn to separate your true self from your subjective, vulnerable self. This vulnerable self, which is so easily swayed by what happens in the world, is the source of most of your suffering. It's the part of you that panics when things go wrong, that feels hurt by criticism, that worries about the future and regrets the past. But here's the truth. Nothing bad that happens to you can truly harm your inner self unless you let it. The Stoics remind us time and time again that it's not the events themselves that cause us suffering, but our judgments about them. Marcus Aurelius put it simply, "You have power over your mind, not outside events. Realize this, and you will find strength." This is the essence of Stoicism. It's not about changing what happens to you, it's about changing how you respond to what happens. And that starts with recognizing that the part of you that feels fear, anger, or despair is not the real you. It's just your subjective self reacting to the world. Once you recognize this, you can rise above it. You can situate yourself in a place where you see reality for what it truly is. Neutral, indifferent, and beyond your control. The world isn't out to get you. Life isn't some grand scheme to make you suffer. It's your subjective self that creates this illusion, and the moment you step outside of it, you begin to see things differently, more clearly. You start to realize that most of the things you worry about don't deserve your attention. This is the turning point. This is where life starts anew. When you can make this separation between your true self and your vulnerable self, that's when Stoicism really begins to work for you. That's when you stop seeing it as merely a set of practices for managing anger, reducing stress, or controlling desires, and start experiencing it as a way to fundamentally change how you see and live in the world. When you finally let go of the idea that you are your thoughts, your experiences, and your emotions, you stop worrying about the things that used to weigh you down. Everything gets better. Your self-discipline, your self-control, your temperance, your cultivation of inner peace and resilience, your self-awareness, your equanimity. You practice forgiveness more often. You stop caring what others think. You start to live with a sense of calm, clarity, and purpose. Even the practice of Stoic principles of the dichotomy of control, negative visualization, Memento Mori, Amor Fati, and the view from above gets easier and, more importantly, effective. Isn't that what you've been searching for all along? To help you along your way to your true self, check out our videos on how to become mindful of the dangers to your peace of mind. Be it the sudden dangers of fortune or the more insidious that humans pose to both our body and mind. Be it understanding fear and anxiety. By understanding necessary fears that shape us, groundless fears that do just the opposite, the ills of our imagination that worsen our suffering. Be it about being certain in times of uncertainty. We've got you covered. If you like what we do, feel free to do more and like and share the video. And if you haven't already, subscribe to the channel, to the community.